4th of July weekend, 2017. I had about 470 dives under my belt at that time.
So a beginner.
Yeah, just starting out. Compared to some of my friends.
Oh, of course.
Still a baby.
Yeah.
I was tech trained at that point. I'd been diving a rebreather for a while. I'd been down to 200 feet on trimix. Never had a problem that I was fully aware of. And my rebreather was in the shop getting serviced. I was getting my first stages, their annual maintenance done.
Right.
And so I was on open circuit. I was on the Pac Star. We had done...
Shout out to the Pac Star.
Yeah,
great dive boat.
Pac Star is a great dive boat, and we're so fortunate in SoCal to have so many great dive boats. But we had done 4 dives that day. It was on the backside of Catalina. And I was diving with my Shearwater Petrel set to the liberal settings, which turned out to be very liberal.
Yeah.
And I would advise folks who have a Petrel or a Perdix or a Terric or the new Peregrine that's coming out soon to not use the liberal setting. You should really stick with moderate or better.
Well, especially on multi-dive days.
Especially on multi-dive days,
I probably... Well, explain your... So you're on the backside of Catalina. Explain your dive profile before we start talking about details.
So I was on the liberal setting on my computer, and I was diving fairly aggressively. I was riding my NDLs a bit. I was probably within 5 minutes of my NDL. Doing a lot
No decompression limit for those people who are not in the lingo.
That's right. Sorry about that.
It's
Feel free
okay.
to stop me if
No, it's okay. You never know who's listening.
That's true.
All are welcome.
Anyway, so I was doing a lot of dives where a lot of the dives on the backside of the island are pinnacle dives.
Right.
So the way
great, really interesting dives.
Yeah.
But deeper.
They tend to be deeper, and a common way to do a pinnacle dive is you start the dive at the very beginning deep, so you go down to maybe 100 feet, and then you sort of spiral your way back up, riding your no decompression limit as you go. So when you're at 5 minutes at 100 feet, you then move up to 90 feet. It gives you another 5 minutes, and then when you're at 5 minutes left on your no deco, you go up another 10 feet, and that gives you another 5 minutes, and you sort of ride that up. So I stayed within my no decompression limit the entire set of dives. I had done, I believe, 4 dives that day, and there was a 5th night dive that was scheduled. I had a big camera rig with me. I was diving open circuit, nitrox, I believe. And when I got back...
Oh, you were even on nitrox?
Yeah.
Because the people often say, like, nitrox pushes out the nitrogen. Like, that's why you take, nitrox.
Well, it pushes out the nitrogen if you're diving it on air tables. If you're diving the nitrox tables and you're riding your limit, then
still the limit.
No different. It's still nitrogen in the gas.
Yeah, of course.
So I got back on the boat. My camera rig's about 25 pounds. And, the back of those boats, they sway, they bounce. You have to pull yourself up with all your dive gear. I think my single tank setup's probably in 75 plus.
Yeah. Plus the camera.
Plus the camera, right? So I handed it back up, got up, and I noticed my shoulders were hurting a little bit.
Huh.
I noticed that one of them hurt a little bit after the 3rd dive, and I chalked that up to handing my giant camera overhead to the deckhand.
Which happens. Sometimes you get up from a dive and, you tweak something and you don't, the water's moving. It totally happens. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
And everybody who's done a certain amount of dives has like one time where they're like, I thought I got the bends. And I was like, but I kept my mouth quiet and everything turned out fine.
Right.
Which I don't know is the best plan, but.
Sure. Absolutely. And people do legitimately just tweak their shoulder out
Absolutely.
A little bit from hauling themselves up on the boat, and
Yes.
and they're just fine, and it's not anything DCS related.
Yeah, and usually that's the case. I should say like
case.
9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100.
Right.
Probably that's the case.
So I might have had something after that 3rd dive where the one shoulder was like feeling a little weird. I came back from the 4th dive and both shoulders were hurting this time, and I said, I turned to my girlfriend and I said, I'm not going to do the night dive with you. I'm just going to go down in the bunk. I don't want to push things, like something's a little strange.
So you had an inkling at that point that things were not right.
I had an inkling that maybe something was wrong. So I went down into the bunk room after having taken my dry suit off to get out of my undergarment. I got in my undergarment, took my clothes off, looked down at my stomach, and I was bright purple. I looked like Grimace. I had purple splotches all over my abdomen.
So I've never really seen good photos until your experience, and you always wonder, right? Like, would you know if you had it? And it's pretty obvious, at least in your case. It was pretty. There was no kind of like maybe.
Well, it was interesting because some people were still questioning even that. I actually had the captain say, "Hey, did you change your laundry detergent?"
Oh, like maybe it was an allergic reaction.
Maybe it was an allergic reaction. Yeah,
reasonable.
Yeah, it's reasonable. And I said, no, I've been using this same detergent. Like I am very clearly bent, and I was actually really rather happy that I had the skin bends because I couldn't rationalize that away. I couldn't say, oh, I hurt myself. That's an old weightlifting injury, something like that. Because I do have bad shoulders and bad knees and stuff like that from sports and whatnot. But when you're bright purple, it's really hard to argue with that. And I had my buddies take a bunch of photos of my abdomen that I then posted online, and I sent.
That's when I saw it.
Yeah.
And you posted, so you went above and beyond because you not only posted photos of your particular symptoms, but you also posted your dive profiles in a very specific, clear, articulate description of the event.
Yes.
Which I was wondering, was some of that? Do you have Dan insurance?
I do have Dan.
So,
yes.
And that's probably. Did they request that kind of information?
No, they
really
didn't. No. I did it because I think there's a stigma in the dive community that people are afraid to talk about DCS. There are undeserved hits, and there are certainly deserved hits. But you know what? Everybody makes mistakes, and you can't stigmatize decompression sickness because doing so prevents treatment, and a lot of the injury, a lot of the damage that is done through decompression sickness can be rectified if treated early.
Quickly.
Treated quickly, right.
Yeah.
So if you don't address it, you don't put yourself on oxygen, you don't take a ride in the chamber, that Dan will cover. I didn't pay a dime for my entire treatment, and we'll get into what all happened in a minute.
Do we have prices?
I didn't even get a bill.
Oh, well, that's the best price ever then.
Right. I got to fly in a helicopter. I got medevaced from the chamber to USC for overnight observation. Never saw a bill.
So going back to the moment when you're like, I'm pretty sure Grimace has got bent.
Right.
Yeah. What was the moment? Like, what did you guys do there? Because you're backside of Catalina.
Yeah, backside of Catalina. Thankfully, we had docked at the Isthmus.
Okay.
So, as many folks know, the Catalina hyperbaric chamber is at the Isthmus. So what I did was I went and put myself on the richest nitrox blend that the boat had.
Okay.
They didn't have a pure O2 at the time. I think they had 80% available to me.
It's not bad.
Which was fine.
It's higher than most people use.
Higher than which is a great deco gas. That's what I use for decompression on a lot of my dives. And I put myself on that and just sat there and breathed it for a couple of hours while they were finishing their docking at the Isthmus and were prepping the little dinghy to be able to take me to the island. And, the captain said, he goes, look, you're not a spring chicken. I know you know your stuff. If you think you're bent, I'm happy to, spin everybody up and take you to get you treatment. I said, yeah, let's pull that trigger because I'm purple. I should not be purple.
Not my natural color.
Right. Not.
I look good. Don't get me wrong, but not my natural color.
Right. Exactly. What was amazing.
Did you have to call ahead to the chamber and be like, hey, is anybody home?
Well, no. The chamber's staffed 24/7.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. The volunteers that work there are wonderful folks. They take time out of their schedule. They're not paid.
It's so crazy.
Oh yeah. No, they do wonderful work, and I've got a number of friends who volunteer there. So I put myself on 80%. And I was breathing it in the dinghy on the way to the dock. And what was amazing was by the time I got to the chamber, all of the purple modeling on my skin was basically gone.
Really?
Yeah. The pain
just
in
with
my
80%
shoulders,
oxygen?
Just with the 80% oxygen.
That's impressive.
The pain in my shoulders was basically completely gone. There was a little patch of purple modeling on one of my shoulders that the folks at the chamber could see. But, I mean, my stomach from basically nipples down was very purple.
So
And that
did
was
they
gone.
did they question your diagnosis? Were they like, come on, man?
No. One of the reasons I wanted to have my friends take pictures of it was so I could show them.
That's a good point. Is that what you were thinking when you
Yeah,
did it?
that was one of the things I was thinking when I did that.
I don't know if I'd have that foresight. I'd probably just be like trying to kick down the door of the chamber and be like, let me in.
Well, they're all volunteers there and frankly bored out of their mind.
Looking for company.
Looking for company, yeah. So they were excited when I got there. And because I had what's called Type 1 DCS, which is the skin modeling and musculoskeletal. But with the skin modeling, there's sometimes a neurological component to it that manifests later. So even though I was functionally asymptomatic by the time I got to the chamber, they decided to put me in for a 4-hour ride just in case.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I heard maybe this is not true, but I heard the least amount of time you could go in if they were going to admit you was 6 hours. I don't know if that's true.
I'm pretty sure mine was 4.
Listen, I take your word for it over my hearsay.
Well, they in the chamber, they dive you down to 60 feet, at least for the table that I did. They put you on pure O2, so your PPO2 at that point's, 2, 3, basically.
Yeah.
Because you're about 3 atmospheres down at that point. Didn't tox on that. You always hear when you're taking your nitrox course, oh my God, if you go below 1.6 partial pressure of oxygen, you're going to convulse and you're going to black out.
Well, but it's always more complicated than that, right?
Sure.
Because it depends on how much workload that you're doing. Yeah. Because that's what everybody. No, let's not go down that hole, but it's more complicated than just the partial pressure that you're in.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're lying on a gurney while you're in the chamber.
It's not a dance party in there.
No, not at all. They stick an IV in you, which was very interesting because they're doing it at 60 feet of pressure, and I had blood that just squirted everywhere. It was all down my arm. It was on the gurney.
Oh
I don't know if
God.
it's because of the pressure or the guy just really missed the vein or something like that.
Volunteers, you get what you pay for.
Yeah, the guy was so nice.
Of course.
All of them are.
He's like, I didn't think anybody would ever let me actually stab him with this.
Right,
Yeah, he's super excited.
He was so excited to get to do that. And the volunteers ride in the chamber with you the entire time. And they do that.
So what was our volunteer's name? Do you remember his name?
I don't. It was so many years ago at this point. What I
funny.
do remember is the really horrible 20s music they were playing through.
20s, like 1920s.
Yeah, like roaring 20s music.
Like ragtime and flappers and.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there with basically an aviation gas mask on while they're pumping pure O2 into me, having to listen to this 20s music.
It sounds like a surreal experiment.
It is a little bit.
I feel like I was in like a bomb shelter or something.
It's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
And there's no real bathroom in there, so when you have to get up to go pee because you're in there for 4 hours while they're pumping fluids into you, they kind of give you a pan and say, "There's a corner."
Wow, that's fun.
Yeah. Well, we're divers. We've got no shame in half that stuff.
That's true. Okay, so you're in there for 4 hours. You make really good friends with Bob Doe.
Sure.
And you pee in the corner. You get out.
Well, they fly in a doctor from the mainland.
Right, because the volunteers are not doctors.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay. So they do a consultation over the phone with the doctor, and then they fly in somebody from the mainland who comes in. There's an airlock to the chamber, so you can have people go in and out.
Oh, that's fancy.
Yeah, which is really nice. There's only one main chamber. Certain other chambers, there's multiple sections, so you can dive people to different depths or do different table plans with them. This one only has the one. And so he evaluated me, and then once I was done with my ride, I was completely asymptomatic. But they decided that'd be a good idea to observe me at USC afterwards, and they asked if I was willing to do that. And I said, yeah, I'm along for the ride. Like, you're the doctor. I'm an intellectual property attorney. What the heck do I know?
Well, isn't that weird when a doctor turns to you and says, "What would you like to do?" And it's like, bro,
right.
What should I do?
Right. Well, I got the
You're making the big bucks for a reason.
Exactly. Well, and I got the impression like this was this doctor's, I think he was a resident.
Yeah, okay.
He was as excited about the helicopter ride as I was.
Ah,
I mean, he whipped out his cell phone. He was recording the whole thing. I'm looking over at him, with the fire department. They've got their visors down and their headsets on. I'm like, if he's recording, I'm going to take some pictures because that,
why
what
not?
else am I going to be in? First time in a helicopter.
Hopefully you'll never be in that experience again.
Well, I found the whole thing super interesting because I was asymptomatic by the time I got into the chamber. So, I wasn't scared anymore.
Which is good.
I wasn't concerned.
Yeah.
They did a neurological evaluation, and I didn't have any symptoms. I wasn't stuttering. I didn't have any partial paralysis.
Oh God, could you imagine? Could you imagine if in that moment you realized that your nerves are not working the way they're supposed to?
I mean, that
would be a terrifying moment. You're like, oh my God.
That would be a terrifying moment. So thankfully I didn't have any of that. And so the whole thing was just really interesting because you always hear stories about what it's like. And so I'm going through it feeling basically fine. To me, this is all a precautionary measure at this point.
But you still get to go through the experience.
But I still get to go through the experience, and like I said, got to ride on a helicopter for the first time. And
so, was it actually the chopper that you rode on? Was it one of the Coast Guard ones, or
fire department, LA County Fire Department? So I think they're modified Blackhawks.
Seriously?
Yeah, it was really cool to see downtown from the helicopter.
That's. Listen, after people hear about this, they're going to be lining up to go get
Go to the chamber.
Yeah, exactly. And be like, hey man, drop me off at the island. I'm feeling a little bent.
Yeah.
That's a trippy experience.
It was.
And what was your takeaway? I mean, I think you kind of already gave away your takeaway as far as don't push the limits of your dive computer.
Right. Definitely don't push the limits of your dive computer. Don't set it to the liberal setting. But I also, wanted to know why I got hit, because this was dive 470 something. And like I said, I've been to 200 feet on Trimix. I've done hours of decompression. Wasn't a problem before. And I had the doctor, my primary care doctor, was willing to explore a little bit with me. And so they did what's called a bubble test to see if I had a PFO.
So is this where they do a Doppler scan of your bloodstream to determine?
Correct. Well, so it's not actually of your bloodstream; it's of your heart.
Oh, no kidding.
So what they do is you lie in a bed with an ultrasound machine. They start an IV. They put 2 syringes that they mix with a saline solution to create microbubbles, and they inject the microbubbles into your bloodstream. And at that same time, they either push on your chest, where they have you grunt and bear down like you're lifting something heavy. And what that grunting does is it puts pressure on your chest cavity, and it can cause, if you have a PFO, it'll cause the PFO to open up and allow blood to short circuit from the lungs.
And just so people know, a PFO is?
Oh, you're not going to...
Pulmonary...
It's patent... PFO. Patent... We should look this up. But in short, it's a hole in the wall of your heart.
Okay.
That everybody, basically a quarter of the population has this. And
right.
For the most part, it's not a problem.
It doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't cause problems in most people, except for very specific circumstances.
Correct. There are some theories that PFOs have a correlation with unexplained strokes because your lungs filter out blood clots. And so if you have a big enough PFO and you get enough of these blood clots that skip the lungs and skip the filtering, they can build up and cause strokes.
Oh, okay.
There are some people who theorize that PFOs have a correlation with migraine headaches. That's one of the things they'll test to see if you've got
really
bad migraines. Yeah.
How could those be related?
I'm not a doctor.
There's just a correlation. Okay.
That's just one theory. It's interesting when you start talking to people about this.
Yeah.
They go, oh, God, I have one of my partners that I work with at work. His daughter got tested for a PFO because she gets migraine headaches.
Oh, weird.
And so that's how I found out about that.
But a quarter of the population.
A quarter of the population has it.
Seems like a lot.
It does. Well, everybody has it in utero. It's because your lungs aren't needed when you're in the womb.
Yeah.
And that opening closes for 3/4 of the population. And it can be problematic for divers because when you're underwater and you've got the pressure of the water squeezing on you, it can cause that PFO to open and allow your blood or part of your blood to short circuit your lungs, so that way you don't off gas as efficiently as a normal person.
Interesting. I've never heard this. I
Yeah.
don't know how I've never heard this.
Yeah. So that's can be very problematic for somebody because you can be doing everything right. I very rarely drink. I did not drink before these dives. I try to stay hydrated. I try to get a good night's sleep.
Right. All the things that most organizations suggest you do to avoid this.
Right.
And so, did you actually have a PFO?
I actually did have a PFO. Yes.
And you didn't know until this event?
Didn't know until this event. And, I love
that's
diving so much.
That's a really lame consolation prize.
Well, I went and got it closed.
Yeah. Oh, did you really?
I did, yeah. I documented all that, too. There's pictures of the of the implant that I've got. They go in with a catheter in your groin, go up through some of your arteries, and literally put a plug in the hole of your heart to plug it.
And you chose to do this specifically for diving or just in general?
For diving.
Okay.
Yeah, because
you don't want to you don't want to have off-gassing issues and end up in the chamber again.
Correct.
Is that considered a pre-existing condition when you sign up for DAN? They won't actually let you. I don't know if that's a thing.
I don't know.
That's crazy. I've never heard any of this before.
Oh, really?
No,
Okay.
I've never heard the PFO thing. That's super fascinating. And
Yeah.
how was it, like patient surgery?
So they make you stay overnight for one night.
Yeah.
Seems
reasonable.
Yeah, they knock you out. They make you stay overnight for one night for observation. They scan to make sure that it's still in place. I have yearly follow-ups to make sure that the implant's still in place. It looks like kind of like a space station, basically. It's a nickel titanium structure that has this material on it that basically it comes in as a tube. They put it through the PFO, and then it expands out like a rose almost.
So is it like almost like a camera shutter kind of look to it?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. But
okay.
It starts as a tube and then flares out and basically like rivets your heart, the hole in your heart shut. And then scar tissue grows over it over a series of months to lock it in place and plug the hole. And so after you've got that in, they do a different type of bubble study, which is much more sensitive. They put two of the probes on either side of your head, focused at an artery inside of your neck, head area.
Like your jugular or something?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
And they re-inject the bubbles. And that's so sensitive it can detect a single bubble. Whereas the one aimed at your heart needs is much less sensitive. It needs a massive cascade of bubbles.
Okay.
So that's what they do to check that it's... And I've got pictures of me in the